Thank you, everyone, for being here. So excited to have you all here tonight. Welcome to the Bassler Center's Evening of Storytelling. We haven't done this event since 2019, so it's really an honor to be in this room with you all tonight. My name is Jenny Soren. I'm the co-chair of the Young Leadership Council, or the YLC. Founded in 2016, the YLC is a forum for young adults who are affected by BRCA to engage with the mission of the Bassler Center, stay informed, and build community. The Bassler Center for BRCA was established at Penn Medicine by Penn alumni Mindy and John Gray with a fierce mission to see the world free of the devastating effects of BRCA-related cancers. Since its founding in 2012, the Bassler Center has raised more than $185 million, supporting over 100 research grants and dramatically accelerating the pace of progress for BRCA-related cancers. All proceeds from this evening will support our YLC fund at the Bassler Center. These are specifically young investigators working on novel BRCA research whose brilliant ideas often go unrealized due to a lack of funding. Last year, our young investigator recipient used the funds to support a project focused on early detection of ovarian cancer using microbiome. Tonight, I am so honored to officially announce that we have raised $30,000 for our award tonight that will be generously matched by Susan and David Wolk, bringing our total funds for this evening to $60,000. That's only possible because of each and every person in this room tonight, so thank you all for being here. This evening also would not have been possible without the tireless efforts of the team at Penn Medicine, including our fearless leader, Dr. Susan Domchek, and her team of clinical and administrative staff. And for tonight in particular, I want to give a shout out to my partners in crime, Carolyn Brown and Brian Schwabenland. Thank you for all of your hard work to make tonight happen. Five years ago, my dad stood on this stage and told our family's story with this devastating disease. Every cancer story is truly unique and deserves to be told. A Stanford experiment highlighted in the book Made to Stick shows how stories can be up to 12 to 13 times more memorable than facts and statistics alone. So no offense to the physicians and scientists here tonight, but it's true. The power of storytelling is undeniable. Tonight, we will hear from three remarkable storytellers, but there's just one more I want to highlight, and that's the story of the Bassler Center itself. Faith Bassler died in 2002 of BRCA-related ovarian cancer at the age of 44. She was a devoted mother, wife, and the eldest sister of the Bassler clan. Like so many other families within our community, the Bassler family knew nothing of BRCA gene mutations when they lost Faith. Her untimely death spurred her younger sisters, Mindy and Sherry, who are here tonight, into action that is evident in the long-standing pursuit of the Bassler Center, named in honor of Faith, and for that, we are so grateful. And yet, siblings should be with us throughout our lifespan. For those of us lucky enough to have them, siblings are the only people in the world who know exactly what it's like to have been brought up exactly the way you were. A confidant, a rival, sometimes a third parent. They say that our parents leave us too early, our spouse and our children come too late, our siblings are with us for the entire ride. For the Bassler family, our storytellers, and so many other in this room tonight, we are honoring the siblings, the best friends, and the family who serve as pillars of strength and inspiration to continue on even in their absence. Without any more delay, it is my absolute honor to introduce our first storyteller, Filko Prugo, whose devotion to his late brother put him on a path to walk away from a lucrative career as an attorney in order to obtain his PhD in pathobiology and molecular medicine from Columbia University. I think about this every day. I read about this every day. I am devoting my life to get this PhD. Those were the words that Filko left me with after we first spoke. His love for his brother, who was a brilliant teacher and artist, and his scientific commitment to a cure will be an inspiring source of strength for us all. So please welcome Filko.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. It truly means so much to me that you are all in this room. And that is because BRCA research is deeply personal to me. And tonight I'll share with all of you why I'm here from the perspective of somebody whose family has been completely ravaged by cancer, but also from the perspective of someone who is studying the disease. On a very cold September 24th, 2017, in Toronto, Canada, just after midnight, I watched as my brother passed from metastatic breast cancer. He was only 47 years old. He was a painter and a writer, an avid collector of stamps and coins, and my very good friend. He was taken from his family far too early. Now, during my brother's treatment, we came to learn that he was a BRCA2 carrier. And in fact, that information pieced together a tragic pattern of loss in my family. It explained my father enduring over 5 years of chemotherapy before succumbing to 2 different types of cancer. It also explained my father's brother, my uncle's, death at 33 from cancer. And I came to learn during my brother's treatment that I too was a BRCA2 carrier. So I understand the weight of this mutation. I watched my father die. I watched my brother die. I know what this means for me, and I understand the path ahead for my children. I have 3 kids, a rambunctious 6-year-old boy, an introverted, intellectual 11-year-old boy who, just like his uncle, just like my brother, loves collecting stamps and coins. And I have a daughter who just turned 13 years old. And when I found out that I was a BRCA2 carrier, all I could think of was that I need to forge a path for my children that is different than the path my father, my uncle, my brother, and even I am taking. I had a prophylactic double mastectomy. Sadly, that is currently the best way for me to avoid my brother's fate. Surely there has to be something better than preventative surgeries for my kids. Surely there must be something better than removal of breast tissue, or for my daughter, removal of her fallopian tubes and ovaries. And so I was overcome when I learned of my mutation with a desire to create a better future for my children so that they would have a different alternative path. And that desire changed the course of my life. Now, I'm from a very poor working class family. I was, in fact, the first in my family to go to college. I worked hard in college. I got into a good law school. And after law school, I actually moved down to New York City. I'm originally from Toronto, Canada. I moved to New York, and over the course of 20 years, I made my way up the legal ladder, ultimately becoming the head of the intellectual property group at a very prestigious firm with a wonderful, beautiful office, actually, in Rockefeller Center right here in Midtown Manhattan. But all my resources, all my connections, they couldn't save my brother. And in of themselves, they couldn't alter the course ahead for my children. So I decided to leave law, and I enrolled in a PhD program at Columbia University Medical Center. I gave up custom-made suits for scrubs. I gave up a pretty easy F-train commute to Midtown for a very long, actually, A-train commute all the way to 168th, which is in Washington Heights. And I'm a fourth-year PhD student now, studying this gene, this mutation, this cancer that has taken so many family members. And so tonight, I'm here not only as someone who has been personally touched by cancer, but also as someone who is studying cancer, as a researcher. And on that score, I want to make one thing very, very, very clear. If we don't fund, if we don't support high-risk, high-reward research of the type that we're here to support tonight, of the type being proposed by the new investigators at the Baxter Center, we will never have the material, transformative changes we need. The government, understandably so, tends to fund research that is less risky and a little more predictable. But we know that's not enough. That's not enough to change the path. For those of you who have a BRCA1 or 2 mutation, or your loved one does, I think I hardly have to say more. You're either battling cancer or you live with the uncertainty of cancer. You've interacted with the medical community and you understand we need better preventative treatments. We need better therapeutic treatments. We need a new course. And if we want that to happen, we have to pick up the torch ourselves and support bold research, risky research. And in this audience, I'm sure there are people who are here to support a friend or maybe a work colleague, and you're wondering, why should I support BRCA research? Well, to you, I say, I think we can agree that breast cancer is an incredibly horrific problem. It has taken the lives of millions of women around the world and will continue to do so without better preventative measures and without better therapeutic measures. Well, by supporting BRCA research, you're actually supporting breast cancer research. Take my own research, for example. I study pancreatic cancer. My contributions will be not only to pancreatic cancer with a mutation, but to pancreatic cancer without the mutation. And so if you're so inclined to support cancer research, there's the support of BRCA or BRCA research is your best rate of return. It's the best rate of return because not only are you helping individuals with this mutation, but you're helping find cures and preventative measures for breast cancer, for ovarian cancer, for fallopian tube cancer, for prostate cancer, for pancreatic cancer. And so tonight, we have the ability to change the future, to make a better future for our sons and our daughters and our grandkids, one where they're not talking anymore about battling cancer. They're talking about overcoming it, or even better, having avoided it completely. So, thank you so very much for your support today. I urge you to continue to support this type of research that we're here to support tonight. Because as someone who's on the bench, I can tell you we can create a better future. We can create a future where fewer and fewer families have to endure the heartache that my family has had to endure. Thank you.
Our next storyteller is Liza Brecker. I'm really excited about this one, as I know she may have been born originally for the stage. I know both Liza and her older sister Annabelle were always cast as the main leads when we attended summer camp together, so this should be a pretty good one. I know Liza considers herself an old soul, but her cheeriness and zest for life is intoxicating. Like so many other non-BRCA carriers have expressed, Liza felt a lot of guilt as the only non-BRCA carrier in her nuclear family. She has served as an utter source of strength for her older sister, stepping up to the plate the same way a spouse or a partner would. Liza, your family is so very lucky to have you, and thank you for sharing your story.
Well, I just want to start by saying I'm so grateful that you all are here tonight. I'm so appreciative of your support, and looking out in the audience and seeing so many faces is just so special to me. So thank you. Did you know that as an Ashkenazi Jew, you have a 1 in 40 chance of having a BRCA1 or BRCA2 mutation? Well, I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, and when I was 17 years old, I learned that both of my parents were that 1 out of 40 people. At 51 and 53 years old, respectively, my mom and dad were diagnosed with the BRCA gene mutation. It was a chilly winter night in New York. My parents sat my sister and I down to share the even more chilling news. It sounded so alarming, especially because I had no idea what the BRCA gene was. Did this mean my mom had breast cancer? No, I learned. So then what did it mean? Not just for my mom, but for all of us. Through my own muddled brain fog, I could pick out the definition that they explained to me. My parents each had a gene mutation that increases their risk in getting certain cancers. I was so afraid to learn this, but reassured by the fact that they kept reiterating that this was a blessing, that knowledge is power, and they were now better armed to make decisions that would save their lives. Immediately after this news, my sister Annabelle, who was 4 years older than I, and I decided we wanted to get tested. Knowledge is power. Our OBGYN was surprised and shared that she usually does not test for the BRCA gene until the age of 25, as that is when carriers are to start taking measures towards monitoring for cancers. Annabelle, who was 21 at the time, had an easier experience receiving the test. I, on the other hand, had to heavily advocate for myself. I knew I had a 66% chance of being a carrier, and I've always been the type of person who would rather know my fate than go through a situation blindly. So after 3 years of pestering my doctor, I may be small, but I'm very persuasive, I got tested at the age of 19. My victory of winning this battle was short-lived, because by the time I'd gotten tested, Annabelle's test had come back. We had found out that she was a BRCA1 carrier. That made my mom, dad, and sister the 1 out of 40 statistic. 1 month later, I received a phone call from my OBGYN, the phone call. I hesitantly picked up. I remember my heart racing, my palms drenched, and my cracked voice as I answered. I was going to round out my family as the 1 in 40 statistic. My doctor shared that they received my results and that I was not a carrier. I asked, "Are you sure? Are you positive?" 10 times over, and she repeated that yes, she was sure, and yes, she was positive. I was negative. A flood of emotions coursed through me, mostly relief, but also an intense amount of guilt. My sister and I are closer than anything. They say blood is thicker than water, and ours may as well be molasses or honey. Truly, it's like we share a body and soul. I felt guilty that she would have to go through this emotional and physical turmoil while I sat with a clear fate. I had an idea of what the path ahead looked like for Annabelle, my mom, and my dad, but I'd questioned what that path would look like for me as someone who was BRCA adjacent, not BRCA positive. Of course, everyone was relieved of my diagnosis, but the news was challenging for Annabelle. It made her feel completely alone in this journey. Oddly enough, upon getting tested together, there was some hope that we could go through this together, as we'd always gone through things. However, I promised her, although I wouldn't physically be able to go through this journey, I would still be there every single step of the way. And so I have. Since 2017, my mom has gotten a hysterectomy and double mastectomy, and my sister just the latter. Their experiences were different. My mom had children, a husband, and 50-something years to be comfortable in her womanly body. My sister, on the other hand, was still single, hadn't had the same time to feel comfortable loving her own body. I mean, who wants to get a double mastectomy at the age of 28? Although their circumstances were different, there was one overarching theme: hope. Hope for a long life, hope for the years of research to come, and hope that with this knowledge, we could help spread awareness about the BRCA mutation. I knew that I couldn't necessarily relate to their lived experiences, but I wanted to show up for them and show that even though I was not a carrier, I would still fight alongside them for their future. I did the research, joined the Baxter Center's Youth Leadership Council, and asked all the questions. Annabelle and I have always been different. I am more type A, relentless, and quick to respond. Like a fox. She has always been more laid back, thinking before she speaks, more of a sloth. No offense, Annabelle. If it were me, the fox, I would have scheduled my double mastectomy 2 weeks after finding out that I were a carrier. But my sister isn't me, and so she had to do it in her own slow time. And when the time came this past summer, she was more than ready. Sloths are actually over 3 times stronger than the average human, and this rings true of my sister. Always one to turn a dark situation light, Annabelle hosted a bye-bye boobies party, complete with a broad piñata full of candy. Talk about finding the sweet in something unfortunate. I was so proud of her and the outlook she had on this chapter of her life. It was a celebration of taking control of her future and, of course, for the new boobs to come. Annabelle works part-time as an instructor at Barry's boot camp. She's extremely fit and prioritizes staying active in her day-to-day life. She is living proof that no matter how fit or healthy you are, you may still be at risk. It is critical to learn about your family history and make proactive decisions. Annabelle shared her journey on Instagram and received a flood of DMs. Should I get tested? Where do I get tested? What cancers are linked with this gene? As I shared before, this was part of our hope, to amplify the awareness surrounding BRCA. It's part of the reason I'm standing up here speaking to you. I've always been one to speak up, literally and figuratively. My voice can be heard from miles away. I haven't always been the best at volume control, but I also speak up for what I believe to be true. I will always speak up for this cause. Everyone has a cause or organization that is important to them. I see it at work, where I'm on the corporate social responsibility team at NBC Universal. Most people don't know what that is. Hi, Dad. So I explain it as so. My team works with NBCU's nonprofit partners to help better the communities where we live and work. Dad, I'll be quizzing you on that later. I love what I do. It measures my love for telling stories with my passion for supporting others. I've heard many speeches from executives and nonprofit representatives about why their cause is so important to them. And mostly, it's because it's personal. They have a connection to the impact of the work and believe in the subject's better future. I hope you can hear that same passion from me. I know that I can never truly understand the effects of being a carrier, nor do I wear the same scars, but I do know that that doesn't mean I can't try and feel what they feel. When I was young, I was taught the difference between empathy and sympathy. Sympathy is when you feel for someone, but empathy is when you feel with someone. Empathy has been a guiding light throughout this experience. When I was sitting next to Annabelle in the hospital after she had awoken from her big surgery, I thought to myself, what would I want to hear right now? And then when she first took her bandages off, I knew I would want Annabelle there, so I made sure to be there for her. Learning that I was not a BRCA gene carrier left me uncertain about how to align my journey with my family's. Standing here today, I confidently feel that I've paved the path firmly in support of theirs. As the youngest member of the family and the only non-carrier, I believe it is my duty to help carry them and the entire community towards a lighter future. Before I finish up here, I would like to go back to that first conversation my parents had with Annabelle and me during that cold winter. The way they framed the news tells me more about them than about their circumstances. Knowledge is power. We should be grateful. We have this information to use in our favor. Thank you, Mom and Dad, for being so brave and positive 8 years ago. Have I felt afraid? Yes. Anxious? For sure. But mostly grateful. Grateful to hold this knowledge for myself, my sister, and my parents. Grateful that there are tools and prophylactic measures. Grateful for the community of the Baxter Center. And I'm grateful that I hopefully will have more time with my family than if they did not know this information. I fully attribute this feeling to my parents. They did not approach us with fear, but rather hope. Lastly, there is one other reason why I'm spreading awareness around BRCA is so important to me. One of my dearest friends lost her mom to breast cancer in 2018. Whew. Prior to her diagnosis, she was unaware that she was a BRCA carrier. Marla was beautiful, an incredible mother and wife, and one of the strongest people I will ever know. She could be found driving carpool in her big block Escalade or cheering in the stands for every one of her daughter's lacrosse games. Her laugh was contagious, and she lit up every room she walked into with her full-mouth smile. Before she passed, I had the honor of visiting her at the hospital, and one of the last things she said to me was, Liza, make sure you get tested for the BRCA gene. I have since fulfilled her wish, and I will also ensure that her wish will reach as many people as possible. I implore you all to take what you've learned here tonight and share it with your community, because knowledge is power. Thank you to the Baxter Center Youth Leadership Council for having me tonight, Jenny Soren and Carolyn Brown for working tirelessly to put this event together, and thank you to my mom, dad, and sister for being the inspiration and engine to propel me forward and spread awareness to everyone about the BRCA gene.
I told you she was made for the stage. Our third and final storyteller this evening has, unfortunately, like so many of us, been around this disease her entire life. That has, in part, shaped her strength. Kristina has just returned from her 4th Abbott World Major in Berlin, a testament to those with health and a human spirit at its finest. In Berlin, she raised more than $25,000, all of which went directly to BRCA research. And just last year, in a longstanding dream to run the Boston Marathon, Kristina raised $30,000 and finished the race alongside none other than her 2 sisters. Kristina has made it her life's mission to not watch her daughters go through the same struggles, and she will empower us all to take our power back. So Kristina, over to you.
Thank you, Jenny. Thank you all so much. Good evening. I'm Kristina Coccoluto. You just told my whole story, so I don't have much to say, right? I just want to say that before I really get going with telling my story, I've told my story on stages, on television, on podcasts, but this is all very new to me. And when I tell my story, I always have to explain hereditary cancer. I always have to explain the BRCA mutation, and I feel really honored to be in a room full of people who just get it. You all understand what that means. So because this is a first for me, we're going to take a selfie real quick. Okay, so make sure you're smiling. Okay, ready? Hi, Mom. Okay, now that that's over with. Because we all know about hereditary cancer, we know that my story doesn't really begin with me. My story begins before I was born, generations and generations ago, and nobody really talked about the things that they experienced. It was the disease that nobody wanted to talk about. It was a woman's issue, a woman's disease. And I remember cancer coming to my life when I was 7. My Auntie Katie was diagnosed, and to know me is to know that my Auntie Katie, if I cry, cry with me. My Auntie Katie was my North Star. She was the person in the family that pulled everybody together, and you already heard me say was. This loss was like the greatest loss, but before I get to the loss, it's knowing that this disease impacted each one of my mom's sisters and my mom by the time I was 10. So you can imagine, as a child, I saw cancer as kind of normal. Like, these are all of the women in my life, they're all amazing, and sometimes they go bald, sometimes they have surgery, sometimes they can't pick me up after school because something's going on. But there was a lot of uncertainty because of cancer, and uncertainty equaled unsafe. And that feeling in my body still I carry today. And so when I talk about cancer being a part of me, it always has been. And as we fast forward years going on, I had other things in my childhood that were pretty awesome, but cancer lived in the background for a really long time. When I was 19 years old, I hugged my aunt for the last time. I didn't know it was the last time when we did. I think I would have hugged her forever, and she knew that. She had metastatic breast cancer and also ovarian cancer, and she carried that quietly. No one in our extended family knew that she was going to die from this, because to know Kathy is to know that nothing was going to take her down. She would say to us over and over again, my sister was obsessed with The Lion King, so she would say, Hakuna Matata, rub my bald head. It means no worries. Come on, rub it. So as my aunt would have everybody rubbing her head, and my sister, I think, like rubbed it and had her lose even more hair because she was like, okay, no worries. It had this feeling of she's forever. and she is, and now she's with me in a completely different way. When she passed in 2005, my life got darker after that, and not just because of the loss of my aunt. I was facing really horrific things, and then 6 months after she passed, I found out that I had melanoma. I'm a BRCA1 carrier, and that's not the norm, but I had melanoma. And at that time, it felt like a red flag, but not really, because at 20, you don't really want to talk about cancer, right? Like you're having fun with your friends and it's not really sexy to talk about. And you're just like, yeah, whatever, so I had cancer. I'm just moving on. And I just kind of felt like I didn't relate to my friends anymore. They were still doing the gin tan laundry thing. If you're my age, which it gives it away, you know, they were going tanning and knowing I had melanoma. And it was one of those things where I was like, oh, I just don't relate to them anymore. This stinks. I feel different. And I'll tell you, my whole story shifted because of my gynecologist. At the time, we were having a conversation around birth control. I was with my high school sweetheart. And we were having the discussion about birth control. And I was like, well, I'm not on it. And I'll be honest with you. I know from a medical standpoint that that's not the best thing for a BRCA carrier. But inside, I was like, oh, I'm 20. My family's not open about talking about these things. But I have this family history. And she's looking at me and she's like, okay. And I was like, look, there's like a lot of breast cancer. And she looked at me like, okay, and I was like, and ovarian cancer? And she's looking at me even more. She's like, have you been tested for the BRCA mutation? And I looked at her and I was like, no, what's that? And she's like, does anyone in your family have the mutation? And I looked back at her and I was like, I think so, but we don't really talk about it. And I think her whole face changed. And I look back at her and I'm really grateful for her for pushing me. I'll be honest, I wish that she told me to get genetic counseling, but she was like, it's just a simple blood test. So I was like, okay. So I blindly went down to the lab, got my simple blood test right then and there. And then 2 weeks later, I got a call saying that I was a BRCA1 carrier. And I remember sitting in front of the doctor, looking at her like a deer in the headlights, not believing a word she was saying, like, this can't be my life, even though I know that everything about this seems so real because of what I've seen before. Of course this would be me. And the negativity inside of me started to boil so high. And then inside, on top of all of that, everything she said just sounded so stupid about removing my breasts. And I remember looking at her being like, I just got them. What? I'm 25. We're talking about removing my breasts? Okay. Sure, this is another person you're talking to, not me. And I started to numb out even more. And then I was angry thinking of my aunt and then thinking like, okay, it's just removing your breast, but I don't want to remove my breast. I'm not married. And then the anxiety kicked in. And now whatever she's saying isn't making any sense to me. And then I heard the word tamoxifen and chemical menopause. And that's when I really was like, this is the other option? Removing my breast, chemical menopause, or surveillance, which... What? Every 6 months for the rest of my life, I'm going to have surveillance? How am I going to tell my boss that? I'm 25. No one gets a mammogram at 25. And she's looking at me like, I can't believe that you're reacting this way. And I'm looking at her like, how could you give me these results? And as she was coming up with this plan that I, of course, stuck to, I went home that day, looked at my high school sweetheart, and was like, well, apparently I need to get engaged, get married, have a baby by 30 to decrease my risk, and have a baby before 30, and maybe you're going to propose, maybe you're going to run away. I don't know what he's sitting in the front row, everybody. So he ended up proposing that year, and then after that, we got married at 26, and then I had my first baby at 27. I'm a planner just like you, Liza. And I was like, we're doing this. We're having this baby. And at that time, I had no genetic counseling still. And 18 months after my daughter was born, I was doing a self-breast exam, and I found a lump. And when I found that lump, I knew it felt like a hard frozen pea. And it persisted. And I remember thinking, is this a clogged milk duct? It's not. I'm not breastfeeding. I haven't been breastfeeding for a while. Oh my God, I'm going to have a panic attack right here in the shower. My daughter's in her little bouncy chair watching me as I'm showering, because any new mom knows you don't shower alone. And I'm like, okay. So I get out, make a mess, and there's water all over my bathroom. And I called my doctor and was like, I need to come in for a mammogram, like now. And she took me in that day. I got a babysitter right away. My mother-in-law took my daughter, and I will never forget that day. My daughter was a late walker, and that was the same day she took her first steps. And I will never forget watching her take her steps that day after I had my mammogram, but I want to tell you the story of that mammogram. I had many mammograms, and if you've had mammograms, you know, usually you can't see the radiologist's face. And I got really good at reading people's faces because uncertainty equals unsafe. And I looked at that radiologist's face, and she looked at me, and then somebody else came in, and then they grabbed a breast surgeon, and I looked, and I was like, oh, and I said a lot of explicitive words at that point. And when I got pulled into the room to have a core needle biopsy, I remember thinking in that moment, I'm not really religious, but if there's a God out there, can you please not have my daughter grow up the same way I grew up? Please don't have my daughter feel this way about her mom. And I shook, my whole body was shaking as that little teeny tiny staple got inserted into my breast. And the doctor explained how if I, if it's not cancer, then they'll just be able to monitor that tumor. And I just remember being like, whatever, fine. Maybe that's the thing that's going to cause me cancer in my body. Because, if you've had this mutation, like you're all of a sudden wondering, is it the latte that's going to cause my broken gene to, you just start thinking, and I'm like, maybe it will be that metal clip. I don't know. I'm going to have a meltdown right here and now. And by the way, anything I'm saying is not medically factual. It's just my feelings. But I had that big moment there. And as I waited 10 days in Boston in February of 2015 during the world's worst snowstorm where the snow did not melt until May. I waited 10 days for my results. I woke my husband up, Chris, every single night in a cold sweat planning my funeral because it wouldn't be a Catholic funeral the way I was raised. It had to be a celebration of life and a big party. And he was looking at me like, you're not doing this. I was like, we're doing this. I want a big party. He was like, stop. You probably don't even have cancer. And I was like, well, chances are I do. I'm going to get pulled into that room Sunday, but I'm telling you right now, I am ready. This is the moment I know I am ready for my double mastectomy. If I have cancer, it's coming. And if I don't have cancer, I'm ready. This is it. This is the moment. And I have to tell you, I'm so grateful for that lump because I did not have breast cancer. And that feeling of realizing when I got that call that I didn't have breast cancer, it was like a big exhale, but not really. And I said to myself, Kathy sent me that lump. She sent me that lump, and she's sending me all of the messages that I need. She's with me, and she's sending me that lump to say, move it, girl. So I had a few glasses of wine that night and made a really questionable choice. I looked at my bucket list, and that bucket list said run a marathon, and I had never ran more than a 5K. And I had Googled has high risk for breast cancer, but doesn't have breast cancer. And Bright Pink came up, and some of you might know of Bright Pink. And I decided that I was going to join Team Bright Pink and run the Chicago Marathon, even though I had no business doing that because I had never ran more than a 5K. But you know what? I'm about to remove my breast. So if I can run a marathon, I can confidently walk into an operating room, yeah? And I'm pouring my wine, like looking at and calling my sister up on the phone. And my sister's 7 years younger than me. She was just graduating from college, and she's on the phone. She's like, so you officially signed up for the marathon? Like, the breasts were already decided. She knew. And she was like, you're doing a marathon? I was like, it looks like I just hit submit. And she was like, well, you're not doing it alone. I'm going to run with you. And I was like, oh, wow. And then she called every single person that we know, and we were selling ice to Eskimos and got a lot of people to run the Chicago Marathon. 30 people came out with us that year and raised a lot of money for Bright Pink. And then a few months later, 4 days after my 30th birthday, I crossed the real finish line and had my double mastectomy. The feeling that I felt that day was complete and total freedom from this disease, even though I knew that that wasn't true, that I was reducing my risk but not eliminating it. I was exhaling in a way you couldn't imagine, because I know if my aunt had that choice, she would have chosen the risk-reducing surgery. And then 1 month after my risk-reducing surgery and reconstruction was complete, I got pregnant with my second child because it didn't look that bad. Seriously. And then after I got pregnant again, I decided I'm still in here. I need to prove to everybody that I'm still me. So I'm going to run the New York Marathon. And my whole family was like, oh my God, here we go again. And I was like, we're calling it Tour de Foobs. Hear me out. We're going to run through the streets of New York, raise a ton of money in hell, and it's going to be awesome. It was the worst race of my life, but I did it. So I was like, okay, we're in this now. But the thing about that was that right before we ran, my sister was like, I'm going to get tested and I'm going to use New York as my tool. And sure than ever, my sister tested positive. And it was like we were meant to be on this journey of running marathons together. She looked at me and said, I'm ready to have my mastectomy, but this time I failed to mention I'm from Boston, if you couldn't hear it in my voice already. But my sister was like, there's only one marathon that we know. And I was like, yeah. That was my final plan, to run the Boston Marathon at the end of all of the world majors. But if you're going to have your mastectomy, I guess you're not running alone. So she was like, yeah, we're doing this. We're going to run for Dana-Farber. I was like, we're doing this. So we're like, pouring the wine, looking at each other, like, are we doing this again? We're running another marathon. Oh my God, we're running another marathon. What are we doing? My other sister tested negative. And she was like, we're all running this time for Dana-Farber. So I failed to mention that I made a really big choice leading into this. I also failed to mention I had another child in between then, but I skipped that part over. It was the pandemic, But my son was born in 2019, and then shortly after, in 2023, I realized I was done having children, and my ovarian cancer risk was still there. I was 36 years old at the time my sister said, let's run Boston, and I had scheduled my complete hysterectomy. And my sister was like, I know you're saying you're going to do it, but I'm letting you know you have an out. You have a hysterectomy. Like, probably not a good idea. And I'm also showing my age because I have a paper planner. Even though everything's in my phone, I also like to have it written out too. It helps my brain. And I looked at my paper planner. My complete hysterectomy was scheduled for October 3rd of 2022. The Boston Marathon was on April 17th, 2023. I had an 8-week recovery, 20 weeks to train, and 28 weeks exactly in between. I was like, I'm in. I don't care what this looks like. It's not going to be pretty, but this is a goddamn victory lap. Yeah, let's get this. And my sister was like, okay, we're doing this again. Here we go. And what I want you to know is, even though I was running marathons with all of this going on in the background, there were ups and downs throughout. There were moments that were low lows and high highs. But the thing that I found to be most empowering was giving back to the very thing that I felt like was meant to take me down. I was looking for the purpose in all of this. It felt like so much pain from my family for such a long time. And if you're in this stage of wondering, what's the purpose in all of this? This just feels like a black cloud in my family history. What I want you to know is that, like Filko, like Liza, we all have different stories, and I'll never be a researcher. I am a born talker, if you haven't noticed. But I realize that if I can get people in a room to understand their own risk and to understand the complications of their mutation, and that my children need better options, I believe that there is a difference between my aunt, my mom, and me, and that there's a difference between me and my children, and that's time, technology, and research. We're all here tonight because we want to see better for not only us, but the next generation. Time, technology, and research. I say it often, I say it proudly. I did just get back from Berlin, and I'm gonna update those stats for you. I raised $33,000 for the BRCA research this past time. And I realized during that time that I ran the Chicago Marathon to prove to myself that I could do hard things, that I could do this, that I could have a mastectomy, right? I ran New York to find myself once again to say, I'm still in here despite losing parts of me. I ran Boston as a victory lap to say, you know what? I can overcome anything. I'm outpacing cancer. Check this out. I ran Berlin for all of you, for all of our kids, for the future. Because to me, the Berlin Marathon, I ran a better time than I did in New York. I ran a better time than I did in Boston. And when I crossed that finish line, I had a mental breakdown. It had nothing to do with running. It had everything to do with releasing, knowing that not everything we lose is a loss. Not everything we lose is a loss. I want to say thank you all so much for not only hearing my story, but also for remembering from yourself for if you ever face a difficult moment to know that you can. You can outpace cancer. You can defy cancer. You're doing so just by feeling empowered to know your risk and to take action. Don't ever be afraid to take action. Someday we will see a world where we're defying odds again and outpacing this differently. Thank you so much.
Incredible. So thank you all again so much for being here. It's been an incredibly special evening. I'm really excited to bring up our last speaker to close us out. This is a full circle moment. Dr. Payal Shah is a Penn Medicine oncologist and clinical investigator who specializes in breast cancer, ovarian cancer, and cancer genetics. She trained under Dr. Domchek, and she was actually the recipient of our inaugural Young Investigator Award in 2016. With the support of the Baxter Center for BRCA, Dr. Shah's research focus is on novel therapeutics, including targeted therapy and immunotherapy for patients with breast and ovarian cancer. Dr. Shah, like so many other healthcare professionals within Penn Medicine, is incredibly knowledgeable, empathetic, and attentive to her patients. She's here today after being at a clinic all day and take the train. So thank you so much, Dr. Shah, for being here with us tonight to close us out. Thank you.
So thank you to everyone here for being here tonight, and a special thank you to our absolutely incredible speakers, Filko, Liza, Kristina, for sharing your experiences with us. I can truly say you each brought us laughter, tears, and if it wasn't so distracting, you would each get a standing ovation from the beginning to the end of your talks. Thank you. Tonight's event continues to give us all a sense of the deep impact of the BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations. This affects so many people, so deeply, and for such a long time, generations. All of your voices here are so important. I also want to thank our chair and MC, Jenny Soren, the incredible host committee for all of your work in planning tonight's event, and our generous sponsors for making this event possible, particularly Baxter founders Mindy and John Gray, as well as Helene and Rob Soren. Through events like this, we continue to see why the Young Leadership Council is so important to the BRCA community. Beyond fostering connection, the YLC has fueled novel research being done by early career investigators at the Baxter Center since its inception in 2016. As Jenny said, I am incredibly honored to have been the first recipient of the YLC Young Investigator Award in support of my BRCA-related breast cancer research, and I can truly say that this award propels forward research in this area. To date, the YLC has given out 12 grants totaling more than $290,000 and funding BRCA research in the areas of breast cancer, ovarian cancer, pancreas cancer, and prostate cancers. And the work that's done at the Bassler Center is made possible by the support of people like you, our YLC, and people like Mindy and John Gray and Shari and Len Potter, who lost their dear sister, Faith Bassler, to BRCA-related ovarian cancer at a devastatingly young age. Their unimaginable loss inspired tremendous generosity, and that is what resulted in the Bassler Center for BRCA, the first comprehensive center for BRCA-focused research, treatment, and prevention. We are so grateful that Mindy was able to be here with us tonight, and are so grateful to have her daughter Margot here and her nieces and family as well. The Bassler Center is helping to give people with BRCA1 and BRCA2 mutations better options. We are thinking big because we realize, and tonight's stories demonstrated, that we need to think big. We need to do more. We need to foster concepts like interception to find cancer and stop it before it even starts, sparing women from prophylactic surgeries and giving future generations better choices than the generations that came before. Our unique model provides funding for collaborative research, education, and outreach programs, not only at Penn Medicine, but at leading institutions worldwide. We want to fund the best science, no matter who the scientists are or where they are. We need this in order to revolutionize the field. This collaborative approach is expanding access to genetic testing and spreading life-saving information to high-risk patients. We know that 25 million people are affected worldwide, but only 10% are aware of their mutation status. By raising awareness, Bassler is saving lives with your help. Your generosity and advocacy really do make a difference. By being here tonight, you are helping us change the story for countless generations. This concludes the program, but please stay, grab a drink, food, and connect with one another. And again, thank you so much.